as expensive as everybody says they are. So I guess this is a continuation of things to consider before you get a bird, and that is how much it's going to cost, not only when you first get them, but throughout the entire life of owning them. When it comes to parrots, how much you're going to spend on them is drastically dependent on how big of a bird you get. Usually it doesn't work that way, but parrots get more expensive the bigger they are, and I'm not just talking like the cost of the bird, but when you think about how many toys a macaw is going to destroy and how much food a macaw is going to consume in comparison to how much food my little 28-gram parrotlet is going to eat, there is a massive cost difference. So when I'm going through today's kind of smaller birds, how much your average going to spend on vet bills and food for birds that are around the size of my two, because those are the two that I have the most experience with, obviously, because I live with them. So we'll start off nice and easy. We'll start with the cage. That's usually the first thing you're going to think about when you get a bird is what is the bird going to live in. For the average small-sized bird, to get a cage that's actually the appropriate size for them and isn't one of those like dinky, small, fake castle-looking sort of cages that really isn't suitable for them, you're going to probably end up spending around $100 to $150 on just the empty cage. Sometimes you can get lucky and you can find those kits, but 9 times out of 10 those kits come with terrible things that you don't want to use anyways. So it's honestly better for you in the long run just to get a bigger cage without all the little doodads in it, because you're going to end up getting better items. It'll cost you a tiny bit more overall, but you'll end up with a bigger cage and you'll end up with things that are healthier for your bird. Alright, so $150-ish on a cage. We'll pop that up over there. So the next thing you might want to start considering is food. What kind of food do you want to feed your bird? Now this cost, it's drastic how much different they can be. You can spend like $10 on a bag of seed if that's what you want to feed your bird, and that would probably last you about a month and a half, and you're good to go. If you wanted to go for pellets, it does get more pricey, but the nutrition can be more balanced. I personally feed my birds Tops, totally organics pellets, as well as a few other brands that I mix in, but we'll use Tops for the example because it's kind of one of the more well-known ones. It's going to be around $30 a month to buy a good quality pellet. That's going to last you about a month and a half if you only had one bird, depending on the size of bird that you have. Now you're going to need something to put all that food in. Now yes, most cages do come with dishes, but most cages come with dishes that are not actually appropriate. A lot of them come with plastic that can harbor a lot of bacteria, so you're going to need to probably buy at least one dish. You can keep one plastic one for their dry food if you really want, but you're going to be spending a minimum of $7 to $10 on a stainless steel dish to use for their water. You're also going to need a bathtub, which is probably going to be another $5 to $10 on top of that, just because birds do need something to bathe in. If you don't buy a bathtub, you could just use a plate. I'm sure you got one of those at home, and that'll cancel out a little bit of the startup costs. Okay, so we've got the food, we've got the cage, we've got kind of like the absolute basics. Now we need to fill in the cage, so you're going to need some perches and you're going to need some toys. 9 times out of 10, the cage that you just bought came with plain dowel perches, which are not appropriate for birds to be standing on as the exclusive thing that they have. They're very slippery. They only have one main pressure point they're going to be standing on when they stand on those perches, which can produce a lot of sores on their feet. You need things that are natural, that are going to give them varied angles, different widths and thicknesses in order for them to be able to perch properly and have good foot health for their entire lives. The cheapest perches you can usually find are Manzanita perches. Most common pet stores like PetSmart will carry them, and they're usually around $8 a perch, I think. Now, in order to fill up an average size cage, you probably need about 4 of those perches in a good size cage for a small size bird. You've got $32 just in perches to go into a cage. Now you've got your perches, you've got your food, you've got your cage, now you will need some toys. Now how much you spend on toys is going to be very different. I'm going to go very standard, very basic here and say that you're probably going to want about 7 different toys to fill up the cage, and you're probably going to want more than that actually to rotate out and give them good quality enrichment. But we'll start with 7 just because that's a good odd number for the fun of it. And we'll say you spend about $5 a toy. You will probably be spending more than that. It's usually closer to 10 to 15 if you want good quality toys. But we'll put it at 5 just to make the number a little bit nicer. So 5 and you've got 7 toys, that's going to be $35 worth of toys. And just when you think you're done, you're actually not. Parrots do have one more main requirement for their care, and that is a UV light bulb. This is one that's often not thought about, but windows do filter out a good chunk of UV light, and parrots do see the UV color spectrum, and there's been a lot of studies done that prove that UV light does help with their feather quality, helps with their pregland oils, and helps with hormonal regulation. So it does play a very important role. It's also critical in vitamin D synthesis for them to properly absorb their calcium. So it is a necessity in their lives. It does provide a lot of benefits. Most UV bulbs you can't buy in stores. The only one I think you can find is the Avian Sun. I personally use a Feather Bright. You're gonna spend probably around $100 just on a proper light setup that's going to sit around your bird's cage to provide all those benefits. So this list here is basically everything you're going to be buying at the store. You shouldn't really need anything other than that, other than the bird. Now the bird you get can greatly influence the cost here, because you can get a budgie that's going to be probably $35. You can get parrotlets that can be at upwards of $200. You can get conures that can sometimes be $300 to $400. Or you can get really, really big birds where you've got your Amazons and your Greys and your Macaws that can go anywhere from $1,000 up to $1,500. If you want to see a ridiculously expensive bird, you should go look at the blue eclectus. It's an extremely rare color mutation where the normally green and red birds turn blue. And these birds cost $20,000. Like, it's absurd, and most of them are scams, but they do exist. They are a real thing. It's bizarre. Parrots anyways, are crazy, crazy expensive. And you do need to be cautious of where you're getting them from. I'm not going to get into the rescue versus breeder debate today because it's just a big can of worms. But if you're going to go through a breeder, make sure they're reputable. If you're going to go through a rescue, make sure they're reputable. Try to avoid ordering a bird online. I honestly wouldn't do it at all. Most of the birds that you can purchase online are wild caught and not legal. So if you're going to get a bird, I would steer clear of pet stores and just either go for a responsible breeder that takes proper care of them, that health tests their animals. And if you're going to go through a rescue, again, make sure it's one that's ethical and just, try and support the right people. Obviously, if you get your birds from a breeder, your costs are going to be a bit higher than if you get one from a rescue. Generally, rescue prices are kind of steady and in the same ground because they just want to find these birds a good home. Some breeders can be in it just for the sake of profit, and some raise their prices because they're trying to deter certain types of people from buying their birds that aren't going to invest and take proper care of them. So it is kind of a little bit of give and take. How much you're going to actually be spending on the bird itself varies drastically from where you do decide to get them from. Now there's one more thing you're going to end up spending money on when you first get your bird, and that is the new bird exam. Every single vet does have different costs, but as a general rule of thumb, you're probably going to be spending around $70. For my 2 birds, I spend $75 each just on a general physical exam where they get weighed, they check their vent, make sure their eyes are healthy, etc. And then for their general blood tests that are going to go through and check their red blood cell counts and things like that, you're going to probably be spending around $130, $150. You do need to take your bird to a vet when you first get them, because there's a lot of things that birds can pick up, especially if they're from a pet store, because they're exposed to so many things, they're exposed to so many different birds, and when they're young, they're very, very vulnerable. So taking them to the vet when you first get them will catch any potential diseases that they could have or could have acquired from wherever you got them from before they start getting too bad and could actually cause major damage to your bird. It'll also give you a good base set when you get blood work done because it tells you where they're at and where you can improve. So if you've gotten your bird's blood work done and you see that their calcium is weirdly low, you know that they could use some benefits from a supplement, or you could give them some vegetables that are a little bit higher in calcium to help set them up on the right path to success before they start actually showing physical signs of calcium deficiency. So the grand total there, minus the cost of the bird, because bird costs can vary so drastically. For the supplies and the vet, you're going to be spending around $600 on just the things that they need when you need to bring them home. Now that's not all there is to it. So now you're spending $600 on stuff, and you're spending approximately anywhere from $30 to $300 for a medium-sized conure to a small budgie. And of course, if you're going for a larger conure, you'll need a larger cage, the cost will go up, etc. However, that's not all there is when it comes to buying birds. Startup cost-wise, birds are more expensive than dogs in my experience. When I was working at the pet store, it was around $300 that people were spending. So birds basically double the startup cost for the first time buy, where you're bulk getting everything they need. In terms of lifetime care, so for 1 year of owning a bird, the things you're going to need. So we've already gone through how much you're going to spend on their food. It's around $30 a month you'll be spending for a bag of pellets. And then their vegetables, which is again going to be around $50 a month on how many vegetables they're going to be consuming. Again, both of those numbers will vary quite drastically depending on the species that you get. On top of that, you've also got the vet care, because they have to get those exams done every year to maintain their health. Birds are incredibly good at hiding illnesses. If you don't take them to the vet every year, it is very possible that they will have an illness, they will get sick, and they will be hiding it until it has already done so much damage that it could actually be near impossible to get them back from it. So on top of their vet care and their food and their basic necessities, you're also going to have to be replacing toys quite regularly. In terms of dogs, I find that birds are a little less expensive, at least mine too, when it comes to toys, because dogs tend to rip through their toys a lot faster, and their toys can be more expensive just because they're bigger. You can find bird toys for $5. For most dog toys, I find you're looking closer to 10 to 15, just for an average little toy. So it depends on your animals, of course, but I do find bird toys to be slightly cheaper. But some birds can go through their toys just as fast, if not faster, especially if you have some of the larger species that just absolutely shred everything that you give them. Toy rotation is also incredibly important, even if they haven't destroyed their toys. If you're giving them the same 5 toys every day and they aren't destroying them, that probably tells you that their toys need to be rotated. They've gotten bored of the enrichment that they have. Depending on how many toys you fit in your cage, you're probably going to be spending another $60, $70 just on new toys every month. You can make some your own in order to bring those costs down. You can bulk buy toy parts and assemble them. You can kind of Frankenstein it and make some toys out of old broken toys and make new ones out of it and things like that. There are ways to save money in that regard, but it does come down to how creative you want to be and how much time you want to put into it. So if we total all this up and we look at it in a year, so take all the things that we're doing every month, times it by 12, and you'll get how much you'll be spending in a year. It's actually not that bad. It's definitely a lot cheaper than the vet care and stuff that I have to get for my dogs and cats, because birds don't need, flea, tick, heartworm medication, so it ends up being significantly cheaper in that regard, but it depends on what you declare to be expensive. So parrots, you're going to be spending probably close to $2,000 every year just for their basic necessities. And this is the price point I've put up here for really small birds. This is how much I would be spending on a budgie. This is how much I probably spend just on Mia. So I wouldn't say that birds are absolutely ridiculously crazy expensive to take care of. I do think that there are some things that can be more costly, especially if you go very brand specific and only get very name brand high-end things. I think it also depends what you spend your money on. If you're going to go and buy pre-made toys at the store, you're going to be paying a much more expensive price for the same thing that you could just buy from the manufacturer themselves, or you can go buy the parts and make it. It really is just a matter of how much time and energy you have to put into it to help cut down those costs. In terms of their food, I would say that's probably the cheapest part of their care, because it's not super expensive and it doesn't go bad. I would definitely say food-wise, parrots are significantly cheaper than dogs, because you're paying $30 for a bag that can last them a month and a half, whereas a good dog food brand, you're probably looking closer to $80 for a bag that's going to last you a month. So there are a lot of elements of parrot care that I do find to be cheaper than other animals. Of course, they are still very expensive to take care of. They are very time consuming. They do require a lot of social interaction and things like that. I would say they require a lot more emotional requirements than they do monetary. There's different elements of their care that can make them more difficult, but I wouldn't inherently say that parrots are more expensive to take care for than any other animal, really. If anything, I guess the point of this is just to say that the $30 budgie you're looking at a store can cost you $2,000 every year. And if that's not something that you've considered, or that's not something that you thought could happen, then you need to take a little bit more look into what their care requires, what sort of things they need to be happy and healthy in order to properly prepare yourself for, the cheap little bird you see in a store, to really think about whether or not you're willing to spend that much on them every year. I think that's going to do it for today, so thank you guys so much for watching. I hope this helped give you guys kind of a base idea of what to expect when you're looking into getting a new bird. But thank you guys, and I will see you all next time. Bye.